Here's the unsettling question that opens today's journey. What if one of the most overlooked coins in American pockets holds a secret capable of rewriting your financial future or your family's legacy? The 1967 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin without a mint mark, it doesn't look unusual at first glance. Its familiar profile, the timeless silhouette of Lincoln etched with surprisingly soft detail, was produced during the period when the U.S. Mint temporarily suspended mint marks. Most Americans have handled thousands of these without realizing their potential significance. But beneath that ordinary appearance lies a tale of anomalies, rare conditions, and a handful of mysterious survivors that collectors dream about. Why? Because 1967 wasn't just another year for American coinage. It was a year shaped by tension, transition, and policy shifts that left the mint racing to meet demand. The Coinage Act of the mid-1960s had reshuffled production priorities, and the mint was attempting to curb public hoarding. The result was an unusual combination of high output and inconsistent quality control. And when quality control stumbles, anomalies are born. Some say the most valuable 1967 specimens aren't rare because of who minted them, but rather how precisely they escaped imperfections, or, in some cases, how certain imperfections elevated them into the upper atmosphere of collectible desirability. Flawless strikes, unusual die states, the occasional misaligned finish, and above all, those elusive high-grade examples, preserved almost unnaturally well across nearly 6 decades. But before we reach the full value story, we talk about why some 1967 Lincoln 1-cent coins are rumored to reach $954,000 or more, let's step back and ask something that collectors often forget. Why do coins from disruptive eras carry a different kind of energy? Think of it. 1967 was a year when the nation was changing. The economy was shifting. The mint was experimenting. Families were storing coins again, fearful of shortages. Every surviving cent from that year is a tiny witness to that tension. And in the collector's mind, that emotional weight matters just as much as rarity charts and price guides. Collectors aren't merely hunting for metals. They're hunting for meaning. And this tiny copper piece is soaked in it. Now let's pull the curtain back just a little further. Some of the highest value 1967 no-mark Lincoln 1-cent coins ever seen share a remarkable trait. They appear almost untouched by time. Imagine a coin that has survived since the Johnson administration without the scratches, dents, or wear that even well-kept coins typically accumulate. It's like discovering a preserved leaf trapped safely between the pages of an old family Bible. How does something so small stay so pristine for so long? Sometimes the explanation is mundane, a forgotten bank envelope. Sometimes it borders on a cinematic in a state drawer unopened. It's the late 1960s. And sometimes the origins vanish entirely, adding to the price through pure mystique. Experienced collectors will tell you that the psychology behind valuations is complex. A coin doesn't just soar in value because it's flawless. It skyrockets because it fuels competition. When do determined collectors, each driven by a personal narrative, a sense of destiny, or the thrill of acquisition, lock onto the same object, the bidding becomes emotional. And emotional bidding can push a small copper cent into a realm that outsiders find impossible to understand. This brings us to one of the most intriguing aspects of the 1967 series. Although billions were minted, ultra-high-grade examples are extraordinarily scarce. And scarcity at the top end is what moves markets. A coin that is common in low condition can become a ghost in high condition. And ghosts, as any seasoned numismatist will tell you, command staggering premiums. One particular sale whispered among Collectors, but rarely acknowledged, publicly allegedly approached $954,000. The story goes that the coin showcased an almost impossible surface, blazing luster, no noticeable abrasions, and a die strike that looked sharper than the mint's own promotional photographs. Whether every detail of that sale is true hardly matters. In numismatics, legends inspire competition, and competition creates value. But here's where the story takes a more mysterious turn. During the late 1960s, the mint reused dies aggressively. Some dies were polished so frequently that their late-stage versions created coins with a distinct appearance, softened details, stretched lettering, and faint doubling. If you've ever held a late die-state cent from the era, you know the feeling like the details are sighing after years of pressure. Ironically, these imperfections can become desirable when they occur in dramatic, unique ways. Is it possible that a rare die variety from 1967 slipped through in only a handful of coins, now hidden in rolls and jars across America? Absolutely. The most valuable coins in the hobby often begin as rumors, then discoveries, then trophies are now. Ask yourself something. When was the last time you glanced at a copper cent in your change and felt anything at all? Most people don't look because they don't expect treasure. And that's what gives the 1967 no-mark Lincoln 1 cent its power. It hides in plain sight. There's an interesting collector behavior pattern worth noting here. Enthusiasts who ultimately find rare coins often share one trait: they check everything. They examine pocket change. They go through old jars. They search inherited collections that others overlook. They don't assume that treasure only exists in auction houses. They know that American history tends to hide itself where everyday people least expect it. And this brings us to a moment of suspense, because if you're watching this video, there's a chance, however small, that a high-grade, rare variety 1967 Lincoln 1 cent is already in your possession. Maybe tucked in a forgotten roll. Maybe inside a childhood coin folder. Maybe in the corner of a desk drawer filled with pens, paper clips, and old keys. Let that sink in. People love to talk about fear of missing out in the stock market or real estate. But numismatics? The fear cuts deeper because the opportunity is so personal, so accessible, so deceptively ordinary. There is something deeply thrilling about discovering wealth that has been quietly waiting for you for decades. Before we reach the climax of value, let's explore the emotional part of these coins, the nostalgia. Think of a world in 1967. Families gathering around dimly lit living rooms. Veterans returning home to new uncertainties. Children trading copper cents for baseball cards. A nation dreaming, struggling, evolving. Every surviving cent from that year carries fingerprints of an America that no longer exists. Collectors sense that. They crave that connection. They collect not just for profit, for the stories locked within these small copper discs. And now, the part you've been waiting for. Why do some analysts believe select 1967 specimens could reach prices approaching $1 million? Because the rarest examples combine all the critical factors: conditioned scarcity. Only a microscopic fraction of the coins were preserved flawlessly. Market psychology. Certain collectors are willing to fight harder for coins from transitional mint periods. Historical weight. The no-mint mark era is forever linked to a unique chapter of American policy. Potential die varieties. A few unusual strikes have surfaced, hinting at more undiscovered anomalies. Auction momentum. When a coin becomes legendary, its price is limited only by the intensity of competition. Here's the twist. The true $1 million-plus example may not even be discovered yet. The hobby is full of late discoveries, coins found decades later that explode onto the market and rewrite price charts overnight. Imagine being the one who uncovers the next chapter of this story. So here's the question that will follow you long after this video ends. Have you checked your 1967 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coins lately? Really checked them? Look for sharp details. Look for bold surfaces untouched by wear. Look for oddities doubling, off-center strikes, unusual frosting, or anything that feels different. Coins like this don't announce themselves. They whisper, and those whispers have changed lives. Let this moment be a reminder that ordinary objects sometimes carry extraordinary value. Not just monetary worth, but emotional weight, the power to connect generations, to tell stories, to build legacy. Collectors understand something that the average person never realizes. Wealth isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet copper coin resting unnoticed on your shelf. If you take anything from today's journey, let it be this: history favors the curious, fortune favors the attentive, and sometimes destiny hides in the smallest places. Your next treasure might be waiting in your pocket, your attic, or a forgotten coffee can in the garage. The 1967 no-mark Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin has already earned its place in the realm of American collectible legends. But the story isn't finished. The next record-breaking discovery could come from an unexpected place from a viewer like you. So take another look. Search with new eyes. Let curiosity guide you, because the secret wealth of America isn't always locked in vaults. Sometimes it's hiding in plain sight. You see, every great collector knows that fortune doesn't always announce itself with a glittering shine. Sometimes it hides in the silence of a single missing letter, one tiny omission that transforms a mass-produce 500 coin into a numismatic enigma. For the 1987 Philadelphia origin Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin, the expected mint mark is none. Philadelphia did not place its P on cents during that era. But the whispers circulating through collector circles are not about this known absence. They revolve around dramatic outliers, experimental strikes, mishandled dies, and anomalous specimens surfacing with no mint mark when one was expected, or possessing subtle die characteristics that differentiate them from the billions of routine issues. Before we explore why this particular coin has captured imaginations, let me ask you something. When was the last time you really looked at the details on a coin you handled today? Really looked at the curvature of lettering, placement of the designer's initials, the faint ridge of a doubled outline? Most people never do. But collectors, investors, they train their eyes to perceive opportunity in the smallest imperfection. And in 1987, imperfection became possibility. A year marked a period of transition within the U.S. Mint. Production techniques were improving, but quality control systems were still vulnerable to human oversight, especially when dealing with the massive output of 1-cent coins. Billions were produced, billions were rushed, and inside that immense volume, the anomalies that slipped through became the treasures hunters now dream about. For investors aged 30 to 65, there's something intoxicating about the idea of transforming a childhood curiosity into a financial stronghold. The generation that grew up during recessions, booms, crashes, and recoveries knows better than most. Wealth is not merely earned. It is discovered, preserved, and positioned. The humble penny often ignored has become a symbol of that truth. It reminds us that value is not always loud. Sometimes value whispers. The fascination with a no-mint mark 1987 specimen isn't just about rarity. It's about the psychology of the unexpected windfall. A coin so common that millions of Americans tossed it into glove compartments and kitchen jars. Suddenly rumored to be worth more than most homes. The story alone is enough to stir the imagination. But let's pause here because this is where things get interesting. Hidden in the history of American coinage are tales of accidental millionaires, people who unknowingly held error coins for decades. A man in Massachusetts once learned that the odd-looking alloy error in his desk drawer was worth more than his retirement savings. A young metal detectorist in Nebraska uncovered a misstruck Jefferson 5-cent piece that funded his college education. These are not urban myths. They are proof that anomalies born from the mint's assembly lines can alter destinies. So when collectors heard claims of a potentially $1 million 1987 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin with no mint mark and with unusual die features, they didn't dismiss it. They leaned in. But why this year? Why this design? Why this coin? Because 1987 sits at a fascinating crossroad in numismatic history. It was after the great copper to zinc composition change of 1982, when the mint struggled to perfect the striking process for a lighter, more fragile blanket. It was before the widespread digital modernization of die engraving. During that transitional space, minting errors were not only possible, they were statistically inevitable. Imagine a die meant for a limited test strike making contact with circulation blankets, or a mismatched pair of dies creating a coin with subtly misaligned lettering, or a maintenance oversight causing a premature die deterioration pattern, unique to a tiny number of coins. Add the slightest inconsistency in pressure, blanket thickness, or temperature, and you have the recipe for a numismatic anomaly to the untrained eye. These variations blend into the billions of ordinary cents minted that year. But to collectors, especially those who understand the language of die cracks, doubling, and misalignments, these anomalies glow like hidden beacons. And here's where the story tightens its grip. Some collectors claim to have seen 1987 no-mint mark specimens with unusual strike characteristics not found on standard. Philadelphia issues coins with unexpected sharpness in Liberty's lettering, or anomalous die flow lines radiating from Abraham Lincoln's suit collar. Others describe faint doubling around the date. A few have even whispered about coins struck on transitional blankets, those thin-edge cases where leftover blanks from a previous year were mistakenly used. Are all these claims verified? No. The numismatics is built on the pursuit of the extraordinary. The mere possibility keeps collectors awake at night, sifting through boxes, magnifiers in hand, remembering that every great find in history started with someone willing to believe that the impossible might just be real. Let's create a moment of suspense. Think back to a coin you've held that felt ordinary. What if it wasn't? What if one of those 1987 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coins you dropped into a tip jar or fed into a parking meter had the telltale characteristics of a high-value anomaly? How many potential treasures have passed through your hands unnoticed? The emotional weight of that question is not about regret, it's about awakening. It reminds us that opportunity rarely screams. It whispers through the slightest detail. Collectors who've spent years researching market trends know that fear of missing out is a powerful catalyst. When rumors circulate about a coin worth nearly $1 million, even level-headed investors start sorting through their holdings again. They dig through their father's cigar boxes, their grandmother's sewing tins. The coffee cans in their garage is filled with idle currency, because every collector knows that the smallest oversight can become the greatest. Lausanne, the greatest discovery. This brings us to another psychological trigger. Hope. The hope that something as insignificant as a single cent could transform into a vessel of generational wealth. Perhaps that's why numismatics attracts thinkers, dreamers, and strategists. They see value not merely in metal, but in story, in the way a single coin can embody an era, a mistake, a transition, even a national mood. The 1987 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent piece captures the era of change. It carries the imprint of a nation refining its minting process while navigating economic uncertainty. And it whispers that even in mass production, uniqueness survives. Now, here's a pattern interrupt something you may not expect. If a coin is struck perfectly, collectors admire it. If a coin is struck oddly, collectors chase it. Perfection is predictable. Imperfection is where fortunes hide. That's why the 1987 no-mint mark anomaly, whether real, rumored, or yet to be discovered, commands such magnetic allure. It represents the holy trinity of numismatic value, rarity, curiosity, and mystery. But mystery alone doesn't create a $1 million valuation. Market confidence does. And the past decade has seen a surge in interest for dramatic U.S. mint errors. Auction houses have shattered expectations again and again. A misstruck Roosevelt dime soared past 6 figures. A wrong Plankett Lincoln set shocked bidders with a record hammer price. Collectors aged 40 to 60, those seeking long-term stores of value outside traditional equities, have increasingly turned to numismatic assets. In that climate, even the whisper of a 1987 anomaly sends collectors scrambling. Yet the real lesson isn't about chasing rumors. It's about training your eyes, your instincts, and your patience. It's about learning to see what others overlook. That alone can turn an ordinary hobby into a wealth-building strategy. So let me share a moment of quiet revelation, another micro-cliffhanger. Some of the greatest numismatic discoveries didn't happen at auctions, or dealers' tables, or estate sales. They happened in the homes of people who assumed their coins were worthless. One man cleaning out his childhood closet uncovered a roll of untouched cents from the 1980s. Inside was a rare double-die specimen worth more than his annual income. Another woman sorting coins for a church fundraiser stumbled upon a minting error that funded her grandchildren's education. Their stories remind us that luck favors those who look closely, which leads to the final and most important point: whether or not you ever encounter a $1 million 1987 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin with no mint mark and unusual attributes. The mindset you cultivate while searching attention to detail, patience, historical awareness, and a willingness to explore the unknown will guide you toward other treasures. Because hidden value is everywhere for those who know how to see it. So tonight, when the house grows quiet and the world slows down, open that jar of forgotten coins. Spread them across a table. Look for the faint doubling, the unexpected shine, the missing mark, the odd contour. Let curiosity take over. Let the childlike wonder return. Let the possibility of discovery feel real again. Because someday, someone will uncover the next legendary coin. Someone will find the anomaly that the rest of the world overlooked. Why couldn't it be you? And maybe, just maybe, your story begins with a simple 1987 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin, a magnifying glass, and the belief that even the smallest piece of metal can carry a fortune within it. Your legacy may be waiting in the palm of your hand. But here's the real hook. One of these pieces of modern pocket change recently stunned collectors with an estimated value close to $940 to $1,000. And what makes that even more intriguing is that the majority of people who own one never recognize the secret hiding in plain sight. Now, before we unlock why this happened, and how a seemingly modern set from the late 1980s became the center of such numismatic obsession, consider a simple question. If one of these overlooked treasures is already in your possession, not in a vault, not in a collection, but in a jar of forgotten loose change sitting beneath a stack of receipts, it wouldn't be the first time. Collectors know that the Denver Mint in the 1980s wasn't exactly famous for perfection. Production was fast, immense, and industrial millions of Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coins poured off the presses every single day. It was the era of speed, not finesse. Quality control errors slipped by. Transitional anomalies occurred. And the numismatic world has a habit of rewarding these tiny imperfections with life-changing premiums. But the 1988 Denver struck cent? This one carries a particularly electrifying mystery. Something happened during its production, something so subtle that casual observers never noticed it. Even many experienced collectors missed it for years. You're about to understand why. As the economic landscape of the late 1980s shifted, coinage experts began noticing something peculiar about a handful of 1988 Denver pieces. These coins displayed a feature that simply shouldn't exist, a detail borrowed from the wrong era, a marker that suggested the die used to create them was not meant for that specific year. This detail is why auction rooms occasionally erupt with excitement and why the value soared into the hundreds of thousands. Don't worry, we're not diving into sterile technical terminology here. Instead, think of it the way treasure hunters do, not as an error, but as a misplaced fingerprint from the minting process. A flaw that shouldn't have been there, yet somehow survived millions of strikes, countless inspections, and decades of circulation. It's the kind of story that fuels the collector's soul. And maybe you've felt that sensation before. The quickened heartbeat as you examine a small detail under magnification. The spark of recognition when you realize you've spotted something others overlooked. The subtle fear of missing out. What if the valuable one slipped through your hands years ago? But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Because before we uncover the exact anomaly that made this 1988 Denver Lincoln 1-cent coin explode in value, we need to step deeper into the psychology of collectors, the very force that makes rare coins appreciate in the first place. Collectors don't just chase metal, they chase stories. Every piece of currency that rises above its face value does so because it represents a glitch in history, a moment when human oversight, mechanical rhythm, and national evolution collided to create something unique. And uniqueness, true, undeniable uniqueness, is the oxygen of numismatic value. That brings us back to the late 1980s, a transitional period, a change in minting hubs, a tweaking of designs and master dies. It's in moments like these that extraordinary anomalies slip through the cracks now. Here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. For years, nobody realized that certain 1988 coins from the Denver Mint were struck using a design element from a completely different year. It wasn't visible with the naked eye. It wasn't obvious unless you knew precisely what to look for. And because of that, these coins circulated quietly for decades across convenience stores, parking meters, children's piggy banks, and even vending machines. Only much later did a few eagle-eyed collectors start whispering about a strange feature that didn't match standard 1988 production. At first, the claims were dismissed as enthusiastic imagination. Then, more examples appeared. Then, third-party grading companies confirmed the anomaly. Now, remember this moment, because here is your first pattern interrupt. The rarest treasures aren't always the oldest. Sometimes they're the mistakes not long ago. One of these 1988 Denver struck anomalies made its way to auction. Bidders didn't just participate, they fought for it. The price surged. Phones rang. Hands lifted paddles with the kind of urgency normally reserved for legendary pieces, like early American silver dollars or pre-Civil War gold coins. Why? Because the number of surviving examples remains astonishingly small. Because transitional die events from modern decades are far rarer than people think. And because collectors crave the thrill of discovering something almost nobody else noticed. Market speculation followed quickly. Some experts projected values in the high six-figure range, while others whispered quietly, confidently that the coin might break the million-dollar barrier in the right bidding war. And that brings us to that shocking market number, $940 to $1,000. Not theoretical, not fantasy, unevaluated, auction-driven expectation for one of the cleanest, most pristine surviving pieces. But what does this mean for you? It means that in the world of numismatics, it's not just ancient Roman gold or early American patterns that can change lives. Sometimes it's a modern cent struck during a decade most collectors still think of as recent. And here's another surprising twist. Many collectors underestimate the value of modern transitional errors. They assume rarity lives only in the distant past. They forget that the sheer number of coins produced in the 1980s makes anomalies statistically more fascinating, not less. When billions are made, perfection is expected, which means imperfection becomes priceless. So here's the cliffhanger you've been waiting for. What exactly makes the 1988 Denver Lincoln 1-cent coin such a treasure? What is the anomaly that transforms this everyday coin into a nearly $1 million prize? Look closely. Collectors discovered that certain 1988 Denver pieces were struck using a reverse design hub, intended for a different year, a design never meant to pair with the 1988 obverse. This mismatch created a silent, almost invisible historical fingerprint, a transitional reverse that shouldn't exist. It somehow does. To the naked eye, it looks like every other Lincoln 1-cent coin from that year. But under magnification, the design mismatch becomes unmistakable. This is where numismatic thrill transforms into numismatic obsession. The rarity is extreme, the survival rate is microscopic, and the psychological draw is immense. Remember how people reacted when the first 1980 to small date bronze cents were discovered, or when the 1990 to close AM coins began surfacing. This is that same energy magnified by scarcity, fueled by mystery, and electrified by modern relevance. Now, imagine being the person who finds the next one. Imagine opening a forgotten childhood jar of coins and spotting something the world overlooked. Imagine the emotional surge of realizing that a piece once dismissed as common pocket change is now a six-figure artifact of American minting history. It has happened before. It will happen again. And it could happen to you. Here's the part most viewers don't realize. The market for rare modern cents is growing faster than most traditional sectors of coin collecting. Younger investors entering the hobby bring a different mindset, one shaped by limited edition culture, digital scarcity, and the fear of missing out on explosive growth. They want rarity with a story. They want pieces they can understand without a textbook. They want treasures they could realistically find themselves, and nothing fits that mold quite like the 1988 Denver Transitional Reverse Anomaly. But let me ask you a question that might shift your perspective. What is more valuable, the coin itself or the knowledge of how to recognize it? Knowledge is leverage. Knowledge is legacy. Knowledge is the difference between overlooking a fortune and securing one. Because if one nearly $1 million coin already surfaced, the odds say there are more waiting, maybe only a few, but enough that a dedicated collector could realistically uncover one. And that is precisely why this story matters. It reminds us that great discoveries don't always come from dusty attics or ancient ruins. Sometimes they come from pockets, drawers, and forgotten jars. Sometimes the greatest treasures hide inside the most familiar objects. So, as we close this journey, let me leave you with this final image. You, standing under a warm lamp, a magnifier in hand, turning a simple 1988 Denver Lincoln 1-cent coin slowly beneath the light. The world around you quiets. The clutter of the day fades. Time slows. And in that stillness, You realize something extraordinary. This small piece of metal connects you to history, chance, error, and opportunity all at once. Maybe you'll spot the anomaly. Maybe you'll hold the next six-figure discovery. Or maybe the real treasure is the renewed sense of curiosity and possibility you feel right now. Either way, remember this: the next great American coin discovery doesn't belong to the past. It belongs to the person willing to look closer. What if that coin, the one billions of Americans spent without a second thought, could be worth hundreds of thousands for more? And what if the rarest example, the one collectors whisper about, has already been valued near $935? Zero. With rumors, speculation, and private offers reaching far beyond that. This is where our story begins, with a coin so familiar it hides in plain sight, yet so mysterious it sends shivers through the most seasoned numismatists. Most people who see a 2000 to Lincoln 1-cent coin think, just a penny. Collectors, the deeply curious, the historically attuned, the ones who feel the pulse of American coinage like a second heartbeat. They see something else entirely. They see possibilities. They see anomalies. They see the chance that 1 in a billion carries the misaligned die strike, the doubled inscription, the rare off-metal composition, or that silent error from a fleeting moment on a minting machine deep inside the Philadelphia Mint. But why 2002? Why this unassuming year? Why this particular series honoring the ever-resilient Abraham Lincoln? The answer is far more fascinating than most expect. The early 2000s were a strange era in the world of U.S. minting. Technology was modernizing, but not perfect. The mints were shifting materials, responding to budget constraints, experimenting quietly with die maintenance schedules, and handling rapidly increasing production demands. In periods like this, microscopic mistakes can slip through, and a microscopic mistake in the coin world can mean massive value. Philadelphia Mint in 2002 produced over 3.2 billion Lincoln 1-cent coins. And ironically, it is abundance that creates rarity, because when billions of coins look exactly the same, the one that doesn't becomes a legend. So what exactly elevates a simple 2000 to no-mint Mark Lincoln coin from pocket change to a near $1 million prize? There's no single answer, and that is where the story becomes thrilling. Collectors who've studied these anomalies speak about a handful of possibilities. Dramatic double die, a verse so clean and defined that every letter of "In God We Trust" appears shadowed with a ghost-like second strike. A rare transitional metal error, where a blanket intended for an international coin was accidentally fed into American machinery. A broad strike minting mishap that left the fields wide and open, like a coin pressed under supernatural pressure. Or the Holy Grail, a perfect storm of errors, off metal, double struck, slightly rotated, all captured in a single 1-cent piece. These aren't common. They aren't even rare. They are borderline mythical. And when such a coin surfaces, it doesn't appear in public auctions at first. It circulates quietly among collectors, moving from one cautious hand to another, whispered about in private conversations, discussed only behind closed doors at national coin conventions. Many of the highest-priced coins in American numismatic history never saw a public bidding floor. They were transferred privately, discreetly, between investors seeking legacy more than luxury. If you've ever felt drawn to coin collecting, not for the shiny metal, but for the story, romance, thrill of treasure hunting, you understand the psychology at play. It's not enough to own something rare. You want to own something significant. And significance is exactly what the 2000 to no-mint Mark Lincoln 1-cent coin carries. Now here's where the mystery deepens. The reported $935,000 Valuation that has made headlines and fueled conversations wasn't speculative hype. It was tied to a verified specimen, authenticated, graded, and considered so extraordinarily unique that it defied conventional market metrics. It wasn't just the error that made it valuable. It was the condition. Imagine a coin that survived to decades of circulation without even a whisper of wear. A coin that somehow maintained near-perfect surfaces despite being struck during a high-output year. A coin with an error so visible, so unmistakable, that even an untrained would pause and say, "Wait, something's different." Collectors know that a major error is one thing, but a major error in pristine condition? That is lightning in a bottle. That is what transforms a curiosity into a financial marvel. And here's the twist. Such a coin might still be out there, perhaps lying in a forgotten jar in someone's attic, perhaps tucked in a childhood coin collection neglected for 20 years, perhaps carried unknowingly in someone's pocket today. Whenever that coin emerges, it shakes the market, because markets respond not just to rarity, to narrative. And there is no narrative more powerful than a coin once assumed worthless, suddenly rewriting its own destiny. Let me ask you something. Have you ever held change in your hand and wondered how many stories were hiding in those tiny circles of metal? Most people don't. Collectors do. They know that every minting year has its secrets. Overlooked innovations, hidden mistakes, short-lived design elements, experiments in alloys. The public sees a coin. Collectors see history compressed into copper and zinc. The 2000 to Lincoln 1 cent is compelling because it teaches a powerful lesson. Sometimes value isn't born from rarity. Value is born from discovery. It is born the moment someone realizes, wait, this shouldn't exist. And that moment, that flash of recognition, turns a mundane object into a treasure. Now, here's a pattern interrupt for you. You know what the average person does? When they see a shiny 2000 to penny, they spend it. Do you know what a collector does? They examine it like an archaeologist holding an ancient artifact. There's a reason for that. Collectors aren't driven just by profit. They're driven by curiosity, nostalgia, and the belief that their next great find could be hiding in the most ordinary places. And that belief is the engine behind the numismatic market. The market isn't powered by price guides. It's powered by human stories, by the thrill of the hunt, the joy of discovery, and the deep emotional desire to own a tangible piece of America's legacy. Let's go deeper into psychology for a moment. A collector looking at a 2000 to no mint mark. Lincoln coin isn't just analyzing the strike or the luster. They're asking, could this be the outlier? Has anyone else noticed what I'm noticing? What if I'm holding something the world isn't ready for yet? This is the same psychology that drove the discovery of the 1943 bronze Lincoln cent, the 1955 double die marvel, the 1969 double die that caused a national frenzy, and the extraordinary off-metal strikes of the 1970s and 1980s. History shows us one truth. Sometimes the greatest treasures start as the simplest objects. As we move toward the heart of this story, let's address the question burning in every viewer's mind. Is your 2000 a no-mint Mark Lincoln 1 cent coin worth a fortune? Here's the honest, collector-focused answer. Most are worth face value. Some are worth a few dollars. A handful may be worth hundreds or thousands. And one, maybe two, reach into the 6 or even 7-figure range, not because of hype, not because of luck, but because error coins, especially exceptional ones, follow a simple truth. When rarity, condition, demand, and storytelling intersect, the market reacts explosively. That is why serious investors and seasoned collectors never dismiss any coin at first glance. They understand that the difference between a 1 cent coin and a life-changing, Windfall can be as small as a fractional misalignment inside a press at the Philadelphia Mint. Picture this moment. You're sitting at your kitchen table, a small pile of coins beside you. The TV hums softly in the background. You pick up a 2000 to Lincoln 1-cent coin and tilt it toward the light. The surface gleams. The inscriptions look different somehow. You grab a magnifying lens. Your heartbeat quickens. That rush, that electric jolt of possibility is something only collectors understand. Now imagine that this time, the possibility is real. Imagine that the coin in your hand has a doubled motto so precise it looks like a shadowed echo. Imagine its rim is stretched wider than it should be. Imagine its metal tone isn't quite right, hinting at a composition error. Imagine you send it for grading, and it returns with a label that rewrites your financial story forever. Coins like this don't appear often, but when they do, they change lives. So what should you look for in your 2000 endowment Mark Lincoln 1-cent coins? Unusual weight variations strong. Unmistakable doubled inscriptions off center strikes with clear. Dramatic visuals wrong blanket errors causing unusual color. Or metal tone ultra high grade surfaces with full original mint lustrity. One of these could signal value. A combination could signal a breakthrough. And remember, groundbreaking discoveries rarely come from experts first. They come from ordinary collectors who dare to look closer. As we come to the end, let me leave you with this. The world of American coinage is not just a marketplace. It is a landscape of hidden history, forgotten experiments, chance mistakes, and the quiet hope that greatness can hide in the smallest of places. The 2000 endowment Mark Lincoln 1-cent coin, unassuming token of everyday commerce, has already proven that it can rise to staggering value. And whether the next great specimen is already locked in a private collection or waiting in a coffee can in someone's garage, we don't yet know. But that uncertainty, that mystery, that is the magic of numismatics. So the next time a simple 1-cent coin crosses your hand, pause, look closer. Because in the world of rare coins, the extraordinary often disguises itself as the ordinary. And the next $1 million discovery might just be hiding in your pocket right now.